I love sports fans, okay, because they will just kung fu, ninja jujitsu their way into the weirdest perspectives ever, including whatever a Oklahoma State going to the Pac-12 for security. GTFO. What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master of Football, back at it again. Happy Tuesday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on all things EA college football and get plenty of college football videos, subscribe to this channel right now. I also do some Madden and pro football videos as well. Please subscribe. Quest for 1K. We're almost there. We're getting close, okay? Like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys, so here we are getting ready for week 1 of the 2022 football season for college football. And there's an article that came out by a very, very well-respected Pac-12 media guy, John Canzano. He does a really, really good job at there. And he had a really, really interesting article. We're going to check out that article, what it kind of means, because it looks like there might be a possibility that the Pac-12 survives. So here we are on Twitter, John Canzano. So Pac-12 expansion scenario is getting real. Plus, buyer's remorse in the Big Ten. Can Boise State become Utah? And what of poaching the Big 12? So first of all, before we continue on with this, I want to show you some of these articles here, or some of these comments down here. So we come down here and we see Texas Tech fan and then a Washington State fan. The Texas Tech fan says, honest question, what would any Big 12 member gain by moving to the Pac-12? And the Washington State fan said security. Oklahoma State would bolt immediately if there was a viable out. You're only saying this because there is fear that Tech would be left out. Get real. The Big 12 institutions that are left are like the island of misfits. Okay, first of all, dude, take Washington and Oregon out and forget the fact that Stanford and Cal are really, really good schools. That sentence is so tone deaf that how boneheaded of a thing you can say that. The Washington State fan is going to say that Oklahoma State is going to bolt for the Pac-12 for long-term security, maybe just security in general. We don't know, but that is, oh my God! First of all, that's the least secure team in the Pac-12, saying that a Big 12 team would leave to go to the Pac-12 for security. I love sports fans, okay, because they will just kung fu, ninja jujitsu their way into the weirdest perspectives ever, including whatever a Oklahoma State going to the Pac-12 for security. GTFO. So in this article here, Canzano, Pac-12 expansion scenario is getting real. Plus, is the Big Ten having buyer's remorse? He did a really, really good article here breaking a lot of this information down. And basically, he says right here, it's a wild story. Maybe you did too. It goes like this. The Big Ten Conference presidents didn't love it when ESPN wasn't part of its announced $1.25 billion a year media rights package. They'd grown accustomed to being promoted by the worldwide leaders' propaganda machine. The tale goes that the presidents were giddy over the windfall created by their new deal with Fox, NBC, and CBS, but were supposedly left wringing their hands, wondering how not being a partner with ESPN might affect the Big Ten's brand. When it comes to rankings, perception, and inclusion in a soon-to-be expanded and crazy lucrative college football playoff, ESPN controls a big chunk of the narrative. Add 4 more Pac-12 schools, create a new Big Ten division in the Pacific time zone, shop that to ESPN as part of their new tier of programming. Did some digging around, talk with some consultants, conference insiders, athletic directors, and keep coming back to one thing. It makes almost no sense. This is important here because now again, I think that a lot of people in college football were kind of like, what's the limit to these conferences? Is it 16? Is it 20? Is it 24? Is it 30? Is it just going to be 2 giant conferences? What is the limitation there? I have been saying from the beginning, 16 is actually a really, really nice number. You have a couple limitations here. Like you can't schedule, 30 conference games because you just can't play 30 football games. 12 is the number that seems to be understood for the regular season. A lot of teams do 8 or they do 9 conference games. There's been discussion about 10, which is not unheard of. But the cool thing about 16 is that 16 allows you to do 3 guaranteed rivals every single year. There's a lot of these teams that want to be able to play each other every single year. 3 guaranteed rivals. In addition to, you cut up the remaining 12 teams into 2 chunks. You play 3 every year, and then you play 6 one year, 6 the other. that really helps out the TV partners because you can't claim that Texas A&M and Georgia are going to be opponents against each other if they never actually play each other. But if they play every other year and every 4 years you get to play at everybody's home stadium, that really, really helps out with the media partners because they actually can start to broadcast those games out there. He also says here, talks to ESPN president Burke Magnus. So as Magnus talked about Pac-12 expansion, not contraction. That's first of all, that's the first time we've heard of this. He said he didn't think anyone believed the conference would stay at 10 members. Magnus is negotiating with the conference that spoke about Pac-12 expansion as if it were a foregone conclusion. It caught my attention and raised some eyebrows of those in the media rights world. Send one longtime high-level network executive. I think Burke is pretty honest, or he is a much better liar than I am. So then again there, why might the Big Ten presidents be anxious about the loss of ESPN as a partner? We all know the power of ESPN's platform. College Game Day is a Saturday morning machine. They're trying to compete with that big noon kickoff. They're trying to have their own kind of thing there. But again, at the same time, ESPN is still powerful. It has been hemorrhaging members in certain ways and things like that. But again, it is still the worldwide leader in sports, even if its lead is diminishing in some way. So Canzano says here, I asked Bob Thompson, the former president of Fox Sports Network, and what he made of the story that has been circulating for a couple of weeks. Is it possible the Big Ten presidents had a buyer's remorse and now want ESPN as a partner? He said, as long as that negotiation took, I find it hard to believe that the university presidents didn't know that ESPN wasn't going to be involved prior to the announcement. If they had problems with that then, they certainly would have been brought up at that point. This was a huge decision for the conference going forward and not one that would have been made without the presidents being made aware of all the particulars. Would that new tier of programming be appealing to ESPN? Sure, we've heard about it for weeks. The Big Ten could use Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal to create a package of another 30 games that included those 4 Pac-12 schools plus USC and UCLA. But Thompson tells me it would seem to me that Fox, CBS, and NBC would want those games to go into the selection pool as well. That does ESPN no good at all because instead of having the Pacific time zone's primetime window to itself, which you could easily have by partnering with the Pac-12, the network would now be competing against the Big Ten's primary partners, Fox, CBS, and NBC, for the games. I mean, wouldn't you want to select Oregon versus Washington over Northwestern versus Maryland? Thompson said the money involved would not appear to be a large initial media rights increase for the Ducks or Huskies either. Also, you'd be looking at a significant number of late-night kickoffs for the 4 new additions. We all know how that plays with the fan bases and coaches. I'm letting you right now, Boise State is in the mountain time zone, and we kick off sometimes at 8:30. The fan bases don't really like it, but again, at the same time, I try and tell them, just get over it, because 8:30 kickoffs have been what East Coast teams have been doing forever, or West Coast teams, so we're like, oh, we don't like to go this way, we don't like it. Get over it, especially if you're getting gazillions of dollars. And Canzano even says here, he says, I'm not saying that Oregon and Washington are staying in the Pac-12 forever. We're in wild times. I think we could see another round of significant change to the landscape in 2, 3, 5, or 7 years. But right now, I'm leaning into the idea of the remaining 10 members staying together in this cycle and adding a few more universities via expansion. Expansion would immediately help the Pac-12's mission to hold itself together. If you add new members, especially at a fractional media rights distribution in the initial 2 to 4 years, you could sprinkle some of that leftover revenue on Oregon and Washington to keep them happy. Also, ESPN could foster a loose partnership between the ACC and the Pac-12 to create some interesting crossover games. Okay, nobody is a fan of that. All right, I'm just going. Nobody is a fan of that because they feel like they got burned by it before with the Big Ten, and it was just a mirage. It was absolutely just lip service until you have something in writing. I don't like that at all. However, it says right here, Merton Hanks, the Pac-12's football administrator, told me last week that the conference has never wavered about the concept of going from 9 to 8 conference games. There's only one partner that works with that scenario, the ACC. I mean, realistically, the Big 12, I think they could in that instance, but it just depends on how you see the Big 12. That Cougars fan was like, oh, yeah, trust me, you do not. They don't fit with us. They want security. Sorry, Pac-12 members are absolutely hilarious. It would mean that every Pac-12 member would play one crossover game versus an ACC opponent each football season, with ESPN getting exclusive broadcast rights. Not every Pac-12 member is wild about this idea. Some love it. Others have expressed that it's difficult enough to schedule non-conference games, and they fear this might increase the difficulty. But I think ESPN would get the final vote on this. And yeah, the money and the security from that, you would ultimately probably do it. But Here is what he said here at the bottom. This is where he starts to get into some of the candidates and kind of breaks things down. He didn't include any of the Big 12 members. He has a couple of them here that he references at the bottom, but he mostly references some American and some Mountain West teams. He goes into those strengths and weaknesses right down here. I've been thinking a lot about potential expansion candidates and how the conference's hired consultants might view them. Here are some. San Diego State. San Diego State's got a lot of benefits here. Southern California market. It's got a market that is completely untapped, completely untouched by a lot of different media, markets out there. It's not part of LA. It's actually its own entity. And, San Diego State's a good program. They're investing a lot. Their football program is building up. Snapdragon Stadium's coming around. They're doing a lot of good things. The one interesting thing is whether or not Cal Berkeley could get over the fact that they're going from a UC system sitting at the same table as a Cal State system. UC system is where the doctors and the lawyers from, and the Cal State system is where the teachers and the nurses come from. So again, there's definitely there's a lot of drama there in that relationship. If they can sever that, it would be a huge move for San Diego State. I even talked with my boy Tony Altmore, and he said even if they only did this for a couple years and the conference dissolved, it would still be worth it for San Diego State, one of those Cal State universities, to sit at the table with Cal Berkeley. He gives it right here. He gives the odds 2-1. The biggest question, how soon can the Pac-12 get this done? Canzano's like, dude, listen, we are wasting time. Get them in there right now. What are you doing? The next one here is SMU. This is interesting here. SMU is a tiny campus footprint in Dallas, but the Mustangs have immense donor support, and adding them would get into the Pac-12 into Texas. The DFW market includes more than 2.9 million households. It says right here, does the geography work? I'm going to let you know right now, it absolutely does. Check this out. So this is a market, or this is a FBS map of all the teams out here. I did my best to take out all the teams that didn't really matter here, but you see here that this blue one right here, this is SMU. This is SMU. So you can see this is Dallas. Now, the cool thing about Dallas is a major airport. So a lot of people are like, oh, that does the travel make sense. The travel makes a lot of sense because Dallas-Fort Worth, DFW Airport. It's into Phoenix, into LA, into San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Salt Lake, and Denver. Even into Spokane, which connects to Washington State. I literally had to search it up here on Kayak, but check this out. So Dallas-Fort Worth to Spokane, they have non-stop flights. And again, that's huge because you could be in and out. Like I said, it goes from a 2-hour flight to a 3-hour and 15-minute flight. It's not that big of a deal for a team in Dallas to go up there. So the travel makes a lot of sense. If this was a team that was kind of in Central Texas or West Texas, Texas A&M would be, Texas Tech would be a little bit more difficult. But SMU, Dallas-Fort Worth, in and out. You can play a lot of sports like that. It's really quick and efficient. The geography makes sense. This one here says that the odds on this are a 4-1. And then next up comes UNLV. So UNLV it says right here, the football program has been abysmal, but expansion isn't all about on-field results. See Stanford and Cal to the Big Ten. It's all about the pursuit of revenue, opportunity, and stability. Las Vegas is a rapidly growing market with ample sponsorship opportunities and an NFL stadium. It's the site of the Pac-12's conference championship in basketball and football too. If the Pac-12 wants to make a speculative play, Las Vegas is the bet. Its current TV market, number 40 in a decade, is in the top 25. There's a strong indication that it's going to be growing. This is Nevada's population. Now remember here, when he was pulling those media rights situations, it was pulling from the list of United States television markets based as of 2013. So if we come over here, we check this out. Since 2013, our dear friends in Nevada have gone from 2.8 million people all the way up to 3.185. But in essence, they've got a lot. It's about a 12% increase. So you would assume that those households would go up too in that respect. Again, let's just make sure we are all on the same page here, okay? UNLV is that one annoying kid that you grew up with and you're like, yeah, dude, he sucks. I don't like that guy at all. Yeah, but his family has a pool, so we're going to be friends with him. That is UNLV in conference expansion. It says right here the odds are 5-1, and the biggest question is, does the current number of TV households, 757, I actually think that's a little bit higher, give the Pac-12 pause? I mean, we'll see here. I do know that they're not number one up there. But we see Boise State. Boise State's biggest issue is exactly like he said right there. They don't have nearly as many TV households. But you see here, I love my boys. Obviously, I want to make sure they're in there, but there's a couple of different things here we have to kind of work through. Boise's hired consultants to help them explore opportunities in the Pac-12 and the Big 12. They remember here they actually carve out Boise State home games are their own separate entity to be sold individually to markets out there or to TV partners. So they actually get a little bit higher in revenue from the Mountain West compared to other teams. Like they do that, and again, there's not a lot of Pac-12 teams, or excuse me, Mountain West teams that are happy about that, but that is the way that it goes. It says right here that joining the Pac-12 could immediately boost that figure by a multiple of 3 to 5, and it would help ESPN with a growing stable of attractive primetime windows in the Pacific and Mountain time zones. Boise State wants to matter. It has a good relationship with ESPN and has successfully chased wide exposure. But again, he says right here, there are only 517,000 TV households in all of Idaho. Remember, though, this was back when the Idaho population was 1.6. It is now 1.893, 300,000 people. So I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but remember here, that is a 15% increase, whereas Nevada is only a 12% increase. But at the same time, it doesn't have nearly as many households as the state of Nevada does or other partners like SMU. So it says here, for this reason, I think the Pac-12 could get Boise State at a deep media rights discount in the first few years. I think they would totally agree to that, too. If they went from 5 to 15 to 20 million and everybody else got 25, Boise State would take that deal in a second. They'd probably take 15, if we're being honest here. The odds are 6 to 1. Biggest question, are the Broncos capable of making the same kind of leap in the Pac-12 that Utah made? I think that Utah, AAU member, much bigger market, they're probably much more established, but Boise State might be a junior level of that, meaning like the 1970s or 80s version of Utah. It could develop into that situation, just not anywhere anytime soon. State's growing fast, though. Plenty of Californians here. And then it comes down here, grades a couple more. It says Fresno State. Fresno State, again, the same situation here where, it says that it's actually reasonably located. It's in California, more teams out there in the Pacific time zone. But its big issue is the fact that Sacramento doesn't really count as part of its, TV market area. So it's kind of its own entity. There was one actually hilarious thing where it was like, oh yeah, if you go down from just north of LA to just up to Sacramento, it's like a gazillion people. Yeah, but that's a huge stretch, and I'm not sure how much of that is actually owned by Fresno. He says odds 8 to 1. Biggest question: will the presidents and chancellors of the Pac-12 view the potential addition of Fresno State as diminishing their brand? Fresno State on the football field, very successful. Remember, another Cal State system. So remember, San Diego State, Cal State San Diego, Fresno State, Cal State Fresno, joining and sitting next to the table with UC Berkeley. If UC Berkeley can get over that, it might be a situation they would do. And then he also comes down here and he discusses the Big 12's hunting. George Kliavkov, the back and forth with him and Brett Yormark and all that stuff right here. Well, I remember here, it says this is very, very important to kind of see this here. Still, I'm throwing this out there because one Pac-12 AD told me he's in favor of chasing a number of current and future Big 12 teams versus adding a bunch of Mountain West Conference candidates that dilute the value of the Pac-12. Oklahoma State is at the top of my list. He said odds are 10 to 1. The biggest question, how difficult would it be to get 6 Big 12 schools to jump simultaneously? I know that a couple would be upset. BYU has felt very, very slighted by Utah. I'm not sure. I have a lot of BYU fans that I work with, and they are definitely real sour towards Utah. I know that TCU was one because of Dallas, and then we'll see. I mean, Kansas, if Kansas' football program was good, they would probably be in the Pac-12 right now. But the rest of it, I don't know. But, it's really interesting. This is an article that asks a lot of questions out there. So what do you guys think? I mean, like I said, I think that the Big Ten expanding beyond to 20, I think there's been some pause on that. It might not happen for a while. He did say in that article there would not be any Pac-12 media rights news up until after Labor Day. Labor Day is this coming Monday, not yesterday, but a week from yesterday. So we might have some news after that. But looks like there might be some murmurs here that the Pac-12 might survive. Will it be the Pac-12? Will it be the Pac-16? Will it just be the Pacific Conference? Okay, just make it the freaking Pacific Conference and get all this stuff over with. But get in the comments right now. Let me know what you guys think about this whole situation. And where do you think we're heading with all this stuff? All right, guys, that's it. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Do all that stuff. I appreciate it. That's it for me. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I am out.